Friends, I'd love to share with you from a beautiful passage, a beautiful story, the transfiguration story, and I want to share it from the book of Mark chapter 9, and it is from verse 2 to 8 that I want to read. Mark chapter 9, and from verse 2 to 8. And I want to talk about exceptional hours in our lives. Exceptional hours in our lives. Those moments that are so exceptional, that just happen for a moment and then they disappear. So turn with me to Mark chapter 9, and from verse 2 to 8. It reads, "After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, 'Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah.' He didn't know what to say. They were so afraid. Then a cloud appeared and enveloped them, and a voice came from the cloud, 'This is my son whom I love. Listen to him.' Suddenly they looked around. They no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus." This is the word of God to his people. Friends, as I said, I want to talk about exceptional hours. Exceptional hours in life. Have you ever experienced in your life a moment that is so good, a moment that is so precious that you don't want the moment to end? You just have that experience where you can't let go. You want this moment to last forever. Perhaps you've listened to a song that just speaks to you so differently, and you don't want the song to end. If you have an opportunity to play it again, maybe you press the button, automatic play, that it rewinds and rewinds and rewinds, and you're so lost in that moment. It is an exceptional song. Maybe you've been to a party, and this party is just so good. The mood and the vibe is so great that you just don't want to leave this party. Maybe you've been to a place, you've visited a place, and it's so beautiful. You're enjoying the scenery. You are enjoying that moment. And perhaps you are just shouting to yourself and say, "You know what? I don't want to leave this place. I want to have one more day." And I know of people, and I know even true of myself, when I've been away on holiday for some time, and we just love the place, and we say, perhaps let's add one more day, one more time. And these are exceptional moments in our lives. And perhaps you have experienced a moment with someone that you don't want to let them go. Maybe it's a moment that you say, perhaps I wish I could still have one more dance with my father, one more song with my mother, one more song with my brother, one more embrace, one long hug. And I know, how we wish in our lives for moments when we can't let go. I know of myself, it's true of myself, when I just wish if I could have my mother one more time, if I could have a conversation with her one more time. And these become exceptional moments in our lives. And today, this is the passage where we see an exceptional moment, an exceptional hour in the lives of the disciples, these exceptional hours. And Peter, as you heard, he got so engulfed in this moment, he got so lost in this moment, that he actually says to Jesus, "Master, it is so good that we be here. Can we build tents? Can we build one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah?" And look at the foolishness there. Peter forgets himself. If he had built these 3 tents, where would John himself and James B. So they are just exceptional moments that are happening in their lives. And friends, I want to say this morning, we don't quite know the finer details of what happened. But one thing for sure is what happened that day was just a tremendous thing. It was just an amazing moment that just happened. And when you look at this passage, it's fascinating to realize that even when Mark describes it, he says Jesus was just transfigured before them, and in a way that is so unexplainable. So we just have a glimpse of what happened at the mountaintop. And you know what? Jesus, in his life, never made a move without consulting God. And we see him here seeking and receiving that confirmation of the next move. Prior to this incident, Jesus had asked his disciples, "Who do people say I am?" And they had confessed, and Peter had said, "You are God." That powerful confession that says, "Christ, you are God, you are the God, you are sent from God." And immediately after Peter had confirmed this wonderful confession, Jesus sort of throws something that confuses them. He immediately spoke of his death. He says, "I'm going to die." And immediately after that, he takes them up the mountain. And it is in this mountain that they have this wonderful experience. Friends, in this experience, we have a glimpse of something tremendous. As I said, the lawgiver appeared. Moses, the lawgiver, appeared. And not only did Moses, the lawgiver, appear, it was Elijah, the greatest of the prophets, also appeared. And for a moment, we experienced how Christ is honored. We experienced the unity of the representative of God's three exceptional dispensations. We saw, as I said, the law represented there, the prophets represented there, and the gospel being also represented there. What an amazing experience. It was as if Moses is honoring Christ and saying, "I did my part. I gave them the law and they just couldn't fulfill it, and I'm handing it over to you." It was as if Elijah is saying, as prophets, we did send God's message. As prophets, we did bring God's voice to the people, but it didn't draw them closer. And here you are, God with us, Emmanuel. It was as if they're saying, you take over. It was such an honor, such an fulfillment of the next stage of God. And it was God's approval of this moment. And I love this moment, my friends, because as this happened, the two will later on disappear and Christ remained. When all is said and done, Christ remains. When the law is fulfilled, Christ remains. When the voice of God, as it were, stops speaking through the prophets and what, Christ remains. And I love it because Christ is then transfigured before them. And when we talk of transfiguration, we are talking of a change that is happening on the outside, but it's coming from within. And perhaps you might take interest in even just contrasting this word transfigured with masquerading. You know, people masquerade. It is an outside appearance. That is not true to what is happening within. So friends, in this particular moment, we see the confirmation that Christ is God's messenger to the people. We see Christ having that divine commission. Not only did he have that divine commission, he had that divine message. He had divine credentials in that God spoke to him, and God demonstrates that through his voice. He speaks. We'll pick it up just in a short while, where God then speaks. But I just love this moment, the moment where Christ is honored, the moment where Christ is confirmed as God-sent moment in this exceptional moment. And I then want to turn to the disciples. You know what, friends? In the presence of God, we are awakened from our from our sleep. If you read this same story of transfiguration from Luke, Luke actually said when they were awakened, they then saw the glory of God. Friends, when we are in the presence of God, we need to allow God to awaken our spirits. We need to allow God to awaken us from our sleep. And there are so many things that can just cause us to fall to sleep. There are so many things that hinder us from seeing the glory of God. It could be prejudice. It's just set in our minds that this is how things should be. We could be lost in that love for ease. You know how we love things to be just easy. We just use that as a defense mechanism where we just want things to be easy. Friends, God uses so many things to awaken us from our sleep. He can use sorrow to awaken us. He can use his love to awaken us when we just are so overwhelmed with God's love that we're just lost, that we just are open, our eyes are opened, and we begin to see God differently. And friends, the sense of need can also awaken us from our sleep. I just thought of highlighting those few things that in the presence of God, we are awakened. In the presence of God, when God just brings his glory to us, these exceptional moments have a way of wakening us up. I love one person, in just commenting this passage, he actually said, "Be patient in darkness. You can't have the light all the time." These are just the glimpses of life. And he actually says, no eye, in as much as we have the sun, no eye can gaze steadily into the eye. We just look at it at a glimpse. And God has a way of making exceptional moments carry us through in the dark hours. In the dark and dull hours, it is the exceptional experiences that we have had with God that carry us through. It is when we are lonely that glimpse of the presence of many can carry us through. It is when we are hurt that glimpse and the moment of love can carry us through. God has a way of revealing himself to us in glimpses that will carry us through in the difficult times. This moment of an exceptional time carried the disciples through in the difficult times. It made sense when they then could comprehend when Jesus said, "When you come to heaven, you will experience of my glory." This glimpse of the glory of God made them hold on to the moment and say, aha, it is true, for we experience it. I don't know what exceptional moments you have in your life, but allow these exceptional moments to carry you through. You know what, friends? We console ourselves with memories and anticipations. It is memories of the past that carry us through, and an anticipation of a better moment, an anticipation of a brighter and a better future that carry us through. Exceptional hours carry us in the dark and dull moments of life. And friends, God does not leave his people in the midst of many and sore trials. He is there with us. And here we are at the mountaintop, at a secluded place, at a private place where all the turmoil of the earth is no longer there. What then did the disciples see? They saw Jesus transfigured before them. He unveiled his glory to them. Not only did they see it, they felt the blessedness of the heavenly society in the presence of Moses and Elijah, in the community of those that have gone before. In that presence, they were assured of the blessedness of the fellowship that we have with one another. Even if you read Hebrews 11, it actually says, we are surrounded by this cloud of many witnesses. That Hebrews 12, in fact, we are surrounded with this cloud of many believers. And what else did they experience in this mountaintop? They had an affecting conversation. They had that conversation between Jesus and Moses and Elijah. They had a conversation, and in that conversation, it was a conversation of approval. And in that moment, it is said that they had a commanding, an authoritative and a practical command comes in, and God descended, and God's voice was heard audibly, and he said, "This is my beloved son whom I love." Not only did God say, "I love my son," he says, "Hear him." Friends, when we are in the presence of God, when we experience the presence of God, obedience is demanded of us. And as I said, Peter didn't know how to respond to this. But friends, it is in this verse 7 and 8 that I want to just give us nuggets to carry on. God says, "This is my beloved son, hear him." When we hear Christ, we should hear Christ with such resolution. When we hear Christ, there shouldn't be any excuse, no excuse of work, no excuse of difficulties, no excuse of exceptions. When we hear him call, we should say, "I'm going." When he calls, we should answer. So we hear Christ with resolution. We hear Christ with submission. We've got to submit to the voice of God. It is not only the pride of the world that should be resisted, but it is also the pride of ourselves when we should resist and submit to God. We resist and said, friends, when God speaks, we have no right to say how much or what part of the conversation or part of the message do I take. We have no right to say when and where I should go. When he calls, we should submit to his calling. We should hear Christ with such attention and singleness of the mind. Our mind must be there with such deep and earnest affection. We should hear what God is saying to Christ. It is that exceptional experience when God speaks to you, when God reveals himself to you, that will carry you through in the difficult time. And I want to end on verse 8. Verse 8, which says, when everything had happened, they only saw Jesus. The law had disappeared. The prophets had disappeared, and they were left with Jesus. My friends, when all is said and done, Christ remains. When all is said and done, Christ remains. None is missed if Jesus is present. Man's abiding friend, when everyone else is not there, when whatever else disappears, when whatever else vanishes, Christ remains with his disciples. Though physical health departs, he abides. Though worldly possessions disappear, my friends, he remains. Though dearest friends depart, through death, through betrayal, through distance, he abides. We can remain. We can't remain on the mountaintop in this experience, for there is work down the valley. So every other time God takes us to that mountain, so every other time we experience that beautiful moment, it is not a moment that should last forever, for work is down the valley. My friends, whatever you go through in life, let the exceptional moments with Christ carry you through in life. When all is said and done, the exceptional moments carry us through. May Christ be your exceptional moment that will carry you through the darkest hour. May God truly bless you.